out the little rose, and yes, I'm missing my fingernail. I broke another one. Smashed it in the truck. Okay, anyway, I cut out 4 pieces of padauk, which is that redwood, and I'm going to turn them, and I've got them thinned down to 45 thousandths of an inch. And then I'm going to turn the grain up and down on this one. I'll turn it horizontal on this one. I'll turn this one 45 this way, and I'll turn this one 45 the other way. So none of the grains should be lined up. So that's how I'm going to glue them together. And that still leaves it a little bit thicker than I would like for sawing out, but that's, you know, this will allow me to put together 4 roses if I choose to. For sure, I could pick and choose and pick out really good parts to make one. So the more you have, obviously, the more choices you have. But the problem with that is, if you don't saw it perfectly perpendicular, then the pieces don't match up real good. So I'm going to do my best on sawing. I think maybe I'm on the edge there now. I got it. I've sanded this side to make it really smooth, so this stuff sticks pretty good. Okay, so we've got that one stuck on there, and now we're going to try sawing that out. I can see the dust is going to be a problem, so I'm going to get a dust mask, and I'm going to get my little thing to blow air on here to just keep the line cleaned. You might be wondering why I have an ice cube tray on my table. I had to cut that tray in half to make it fit in my little tiny refrigerator. But today it's not making ice. Today I'm putting one separate piece of this rose, as you can see. I think there's 15 pieces and there happens to be 16 holes. So I'm just putting one piece in each little separate thing of water. And my hope is that the water will soften it enough to, that one there already came apart partly, soften it enough to make them come apart, but yet keep the individual parts separated. I learned my lesson the last time that not keeping these separated is a real pain in the neck. And it's still a pain in the neck because you still don't know if you got them right side up or upside down. So there you go. It's a real nightmare to do this in a way because it's so tiny. Hoping they all pop apart. I glued them with Elmer's white glue, which is fairly water soluble. And this water is warm water. Well, there you go. I got 15 and one space left open. So I'm just going to let those soak. And I'm going to now cut out the stems out of this wood, which is basically yellow, but I'm calling it green because I'm colorblind. And it's a natural piece of wood, a natural color wood, so that's the color that the stems are going to be made out of. Now this is also found right here on my farm, which is really cool. So that's what's neat about that wood, that yellow wood is right here from the farm. I've got the red parts separated. I left the paper on them, and that way I can tell which side goes up. Actually, the paper's coming off of that one there as I just touched it. Hopefully the paper will stay on them, and I'll be able to tell which side goes up, and that helps a lot, believe me, because when you don't have any idea, you know, how they go back together, knowing at least which side goes up helps a whole bunch. And then I've got all the yellow parts in here soaking now too, and they should come apart pretty easy. They actually come apart fairly easy. That's not a problem. Putting them back together could be a real issue. These are some really tiny parts. There's some really tiny parts here. Just thought I'd point out something here. You know, you can see that the water has turned yellow from the yellow wood that I've put in here, or at least it looks yellow to me. You can see I've got all the red wood separated. Well, guess what? Even though this has been so, you know, two observations. Besides the fact that it turned it yellow, of course that wood turned it red. But besides the fact that it turned it yellow, notice that all the pieces have sunk to the bottom. That's the first observation. So I pick them out thinking they'll be really saturated and come apart really easy. Wrong. I can't get any of them apart at all. Where those came apart really easy. Same exact glue. Same exact glue. And these have been sitting overnight. You would think they'd be really soft and come apart really easy, but not so much. In fact, none of them seem to want to come apart at all. Pushing down on the joints between them and that type of thing. That one there, you could just pop it apart with your fingers. Not this one. Same exact glue, obviously different wood, very different reaction. Well, I was just working along, and then it occurred to me that I probably should have had the camera on so you could see how this rose came together. It's, you know, I think there's 15 little individual parts in here that I've got them glued down to this little thin piece of maple right now. The white here is the actual paper that's still on there. I tried to leave most of the white over there because that helps me decide which side goes up or down. And anyway, so now I've got these glued on. I put the first piece of stem on here. This first piece was fairly big. I just really just for, you know, I just needed some for sanity, I think. I left this piece fairly big because there's so much going on here. Yet you can see, we'll back up here, you can see that there's still plenty of pieces to choose from over here. All of these yellow pieces have to go on here yet. This is the only piece I've put on here right so far out of all of the yellow. So I've got all of this to choose from to finish this up. So we got a lot to do here. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the original picture and trying to decide where all these parts go. And even that's not easy, I can tell you. It's just not easy. I thought I had plenty of room the way I laid it out. I took time to lay it out ahead of time, but it doesn't look like it now. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of space right here. Doggone it. I had to put these clamps on here to hold it flat because it keeps raising up. Just like it couldn't be hard enough, you know. It sure does look like it's going to run out of space. It's hard to decide how to lay this out. Maybe not, maybe not. Might just barely have enough room. There's no way to put this together without gluing it, I can tell you that. I've tried that the other way before, and it's impossible. It just moves too much. You just look at it wrong and it's moved. So you pretty much have to glue them in place as you go. Seems like anything I do anymore has to be extra hard. I guess it's just old age. Trying to find some way to keep it flat and yet give me enough room to work. I didn't anticipate the maple curling up on me as I was gluing these pieces on here. The maple wasn't curling before, as far as I know. Oh well, it's just the way it is.
Don't leave Earth without Him, I heard a preacher say. Oh, I care so much about Him, I'm on my knees today. For I'm just a lowly pilgrim at the end of life's highway, and I know that I'm not worthy of my Lord's amazing grace. My life, just like all others, has been filled with tempts and trials, but I've tried to overcome them as I've walked each weary mile. For I know He walks beside me, even when the worst is done. Now I pray He walks beside me as my final race is run. Don't leave Earth without Him, I heard a preacher say. Oh, I care so much about Him.
So hopefully you can see that, and that was tedious and a lot of work. We'll let that set up. Then what I really have to do is I really have to cut it out perfectly and inlay it down in the peg head. That might not be that easy to do either. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Here's a little better picture of the second one coming together. I didn't film it all either, but at least you can see how tedious it is. I decided to go ahead and put the second one together because I don't have any other opportunity to do it except for right now. So if I'm ever going to do it, this is the time to do it. And then if that customer decides that he does want it, you know, this way versus the standard inlay with shell, then I'll have it ready for him. And this one's turning out nice too. I think it's going to be just as nice as the other one. It's hard to put it all together, let me tell you, to make it fit. It just, you know, if you saw it at just the slightest wrong angle when you're sawing it, it just messes up the whole thing, you know. And it's easy to saw it at the wrong angle, let me tell you. Well, this is a tedious little process also. It's not that bad, but you gotta resaw it all out now. I mean, it could be done differently. You wouldn't have to do it this way. I choose to do it this way because it's very hard to put this stuff together. Those little pieces are just so tiny. I mean, I could have taken a chance, routed out a hole in the mandolin and inlaid them all right down in the hole, but that's hard to do too, to get it to fit tight. This will hopefully fit a little tighter. As you notice, I'm leaning my saw, trying to saw under it, trying to create a little bit of a taper so that it'll go into the hole tighter. Hopefully it'll stay together and won't break. That's my biggest concern. It's also very difficult to put something this large into a hole and make it fit really tight. I've got my work cut out for me, let me just tell you that. No pun intended on the cutout part.
I'm on my knees today, for I'm just a Lord.
For the record, I ran super glue around all of this too to try to make it stick a little bit better.
Pilgrim at the end of life's highway, and I know that I'm
Got that much more to go. Is there any chance it'll hold together sawing this delicate stuff out? I don't know, to be honest. That's really going to be hard. Wow. Kind of wish I'd have done it somehow different. I don't know how.
worthy of my Lord's amazing grace. He whosoever believes shall never die, but live with him.
There she is. This down in here, you can't hardly route that out anyway, so I'm just going to route out a big hole and fill that. It'll look better that way than just about any other way I could do it anyway, I think. That's not too bad. I'm fairly happy with that. You always want better, but you got to kind of take what you get sometimes, and that's what I got. And that's really pretty happy with that. We'll just have to go with it and see how it turns out. Well, there you go. That's what she would look like in place. To me, that's looking pretty sweet, really. I think it's going to be really nice. It's a heck of a lot of work to do it that way, but on the other hand, it looks pretty darn cool too. So I think I'm going to go for it. Well, friends, we interrupt this video for two reasons. Number one, a friend, viewer from out in Belgrade, Montana, Bob Shorthill, sent me a care package. He sent me this stuff all rolled up, and there's some conversion charts here for measurements. I've actually got several of these printed out in the shop, believe it or not, but it doesn't hurt to have more, so that's cool. But he also sent me a whole bunch of transfer paper, and this is very, very useful. You know, I probably already have a lifetime supply, to be perfectly honest with you, so I don't really need a whole bunch of this. But this stuff here seems like it's really good stuff. It's really thin, and I think it's going to work really well. So I'm really happy to have it. Thank you very much, Bob. I sure do appreciate it. I might just also mention Bob had a point in here about my spindle sander. Several videos ago I said I was having trouble getting the sleeve over the spindle sander. Well, that sparked a big bunch of debates and things, and I should have been a little more clear. I did already try heating the tube and freezing the spindle. It didn't do any good, and as a matter of fact, heating the tube caused the glue to get soft, and it made the spindle the sleeve come apart. And freezing the rubber didn't do anything to the rubber at all. It didn't seem like it shrunk it even a hair. So the best solution I've heard, and it was one I thought of, I just was hoping to find a better solution, was to just sand the spindle down. So that's probably what I'll do. The next time I change the sleeve, I'll just sand that rubber down and make it smaller. That's really probably the best thing to do. You know, a lot of people said, well, take it off the metal. Well, of course I took it off the metal. I had the rubber in the sleeve here on my desk trying to get it on and couldn't get it on. So yeah, I didn't have it on the metal spindle while I was doing all that. But anyway, I do thank you, Bob. Thank you very kindly for this tracing paper especially. That's really very, very nice. And now, just to prove that no good deed goes unpunished, you're talking about a nightmare. I'm sure you don't recognize this box, but this box contains the mandolin I gave away. I shipped it out to Zoe. It's getting close to a month ago now. You know, they finally notified me that they never received it. Well, then I put a trace on it and it was wound up in New York someplace. I checked the address and it was clearly sent to South Carolina. But they said that the address was wrong in South Carolina, and then they shipped it up to some dock up there in New York for some stupid reason, which my return address was clearly on there. And I don't know, and my phone number was on there, and my email was on there, and did any of that happen? No, none of that happened. They didn't call me or email me. So then I had to spend, you know how that is, an hour or maybe even close to 2 hours all told on the phone, tracking it down, getting it, and they said, well, we're going to have to put a label on it and reship it. Do you want to ship it back to South Carolina? And I said, yes, let's ship it there. So I verified the South Carolina address, and there was a mistake on the address. It wasn't my mistake, I got to be honest. So anyway, I told them to ship it to South Carolina. Well, as you can see, they did that. It showed up here today. So now I got to pay yet again, because I paid to ship it out there once. It went to New York. I had to pay again to have it shipped supposedly back to South Carolina, but it came here. And now I got to try to ship it yet again. No good deed goes unpunished. Ever. That's the way it is with me. Well, on the UK mandolin, since I can't use the shell for the inlay, I have sandwiched 2 pieces of maple together. And you think, well, why would you even need to sandwich 2 pieces? I've got the grains running in different directions. That'll make it a very solid piece of wood when I saw out my name in there. So I'm going to put this on here, saw my name out in the maple, and the maple will be inlaid in the peghead also for the Rosa. And if I had only used the one thickness with the grain running one way, as you saw across those little tiny letters, the grain will just snap right off. But having the grain going 2 different directions, at least it's my prediction that this will work without snapping off. It's only a prediction. We'll have to see how it goes. I cut out the Rosa out of wood there. It's I did it, with those 2 pieces. I should have shown it, I guess, on camera, but it just was a lot of tedium. I broke the first Rosa and I had to resaw it out again. So that looks really good. I hope it's going to work. Man, this is where the work is. There's no question about it. I've got the rose glued on here with the Elmer's glue just temporarily. I've sharpened this little needle pointer just as sharp as I can get it. And my goal is to try to trace around this and scratch the design into the wood here. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Done it before. The problem with doing this is actually that the glue squeezes out from underneath your design, even though you just barely put any on there. And then that's hard to cut through, is that glue. I've done it a whole bunch of different ways over the years, and I don't really like any of them, to be perfectly honest with you. It is just not easy to do. I really want to make them tight inlays. I don't like a lot of fill. Whoa, that moved the stem. Wouldn't you know, that didn't glue good or something. Well, I think I've got this side done on all the way up to the rose here.
Forever in heaven's paradise, I kneel down before him on my final judgment day, and I beg the Lord.
Oh well, I don't know how well that did, but let's see if we can get it off of there now. I was thinking about using the heating iron thing I made for taking bridges off, but I'm going to try just the heat gun first. This might be easier.
Forgiveness through my God's amazing grace. Don't leave earth without him.
See if that did anything. That might have worked. I don't know. Seems like it worked a little. It's always easier to get the rose off than anything else anyway. I didn't want that to happen, but it came off in one piece and it's still intact, so I'm good with that. And it did make a pretty good outline there, so I can put some powder in that now maybe and see it a little better and route that out. Well, as you can see, I routed it out and laid it down in there, and I had to actually press it in, but it was so close to going without any pressing that it was amazing. So, but I pressed it in, so it's all pressed into place. I'm very, very pleased with the way that turned out. I couldn't be much more happy, I don't think. Well, there's what she looks like with the first fill and stain, you know, and that's just, I'd still call that rough actually. So, man, I'm pretty pleased with that. I think that looks pretty sweet. And I hope the fella in Florida would go with this too, because that'll keep them twin mandolins. But I'm going to send him a picture of this and see what he thinks. Here's a close-up of the Florida mandolin after the inlay's been done. And that is, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit closer even. So that's, that yellow wood is hedge, Osage orange. The redwood is padauk. Those are natural colors. You know, I wish I had a green wood, but, you know, to me, I got to tell you, that looks green. With the background like that, it looks green to me. So, I don't know. Maybe, and I know I'm colorblind, so, you know, it is what it is. Here's the wood I just cut out. This is sawed out of maple. So, we're going to inlay this here. And it'll say, it's hard to get it to lay straight, but it'll basically be something like that. I don't know if it's in focus or not, but anyway, it'll lay like something like that, and it'll say the Rosa. So now I just got to get that all routed out and put that in place. My friends, it's a little after 3 in the afternoon on Tuesday, May 7th, and the mandolins are essentially finished. This is the Florida mandolin. Give you an idea there what it looks like. That's all individual pieces of wood. Every little line you see is a separate piece of wood. And all of these are, that's one piece of wood and that's one piece of wood. So the name is just one piece of wood each. Anyway, so that's all inlaid in there, and you can see it's pretty tight. And I have spent, it took me all morning to finish my name up here on this mandolin. So all afternoon I have been sanding this mandolin and detailing it, and it is just about finished. This is the UK mandolin. I've got a little dyeing thing going on up here that I need to work on and clean that up, but otherwise it's about done. It's really pretty much detailed. It's just about ready to stain. Wow, it's been a long road. And you know, you think, well, I always get to thinking that after I stain it and, you know, spray the lacquer on it, well, then it's pretty much over with. Well, it is sort of, but when you stain it, all of this binding gets stained. and every bit of the binding, inside out, upside down, everywhere, has to be scraped. And so that's a ton of work on 2 mandolins. So that's still a big job yet. And then, of course, after you let them sit for a month drying, it's a huge job setting them up for the first time too, to get them set up. So, woo! I'll tell you what, you know, people think I'm charged too much for these. You should build one, and then you'd go, wow, I can't believe you only charge $6,000 for one of these. I'm serious. I'm not making it up. I'm not crying poor mouth. I'm just explaining that there is a freaking ton of work on these. I mean, you've actually seen hours and hours of video just on these 2 mandolins that I've put out. I think I'm on part 6 or 7 already, and it's, you know, that's 6 or 7 hours just in video. Well, multiply that by at least 10 for the amount of real hours that's involved, at least 10, and probably quite a bit more than that, actually. And anyway, it's just a big job, but we are getting toward the end. I can feel it coming. So here I sit, just sanding away.
I heard a preacher say, oh, I care so much about him, I'm on my knees.
The necks have a really nice shape to them, I think. Hopefully the customer will think so. Originally, the Florida mandolin customer said he wanted the Thomas look, and that's what I was going to go with. The UK mandolin fellow chose a look that is from a Collins mandolin. He sent me a picture, and when I showed that to the Florida guy, he said, hey, I like that too. So turns out that we're going to do them both in the same shading and look. So hopefully they will remain twin mandolins all the way through to the end then. Not that that staining really mattered. I didn't expect them both to be stained the same, but as I mentioned, the Florida customer said, hey, I really do like that color scheme he picked out, so I'll go with that. And so that's what we're going to go with.
Today, for I'm just a lowly pilgrim at the end of life's highway, and I know that
and I take them outside. Actually, I sat outside with this one all afternoon in the bright sun sanding it. And I'll probably do the same thing with this one. Actually, I'll take them both out in the bright sun and inspect them before I finally do the staining. But we're getting very close. Not going to bore you with any more of this because that's all I'm doing is sanding. Friends, I interrupt this video to tell you that, first of all, I just walked in the door from playing another little show for the kids. I think that was the 5th graders at the Rolla Middle School. And so I checked my mailbox on the way in and got another care package, and I appreciate it. It's from the UK this time. This is from Colin Richards. And Colin, I really appreciate you thinking of me. He sent me about, I don't know, about 3 dozen glue spreaders. This is a tool that I didn't even know I needed. I've never used a glue spreader, so we'll see how it goes. I'm sure you'll probably be seeing them in a future video. Colin's note said he had noticed that other folks had sent me things, and he thought it was about time he did so. And I don't necessarily feel that way, that you need to send me anything, but I appreciate it very much. He also sent me an SD card that's got some of his music on there, and said that he hopes that I enjoy his music. He said that I remember you mentioning that you don't read very quickly, so he typed this very slowly. I appreciate you thinking about me there, Colin. You little smart aleck. Thank you very much, Colin. I appreciate it. Well, it's that day, you know, that day where we have to go into the staining. You know, it's actually an easy process. It's not hard, but I dread it because I guess it's just because I'm so colorblind, and you know, and I don't ever trust what I'm doing, and etc. and so forth. But we're going to do the best we can. And you know, you just got to work with what you got, and that's what I got. So here we go. If you look over my shoulder right there, that's what we're trying to emulate. The fella in the UK, Rob, that's what he picked out, and that was the, it's a Collins coloring, or a Collins mandolin that he found on the internet. And the fellow from Florida, I think to be more accommodating than anything, he said that he liked that one too. And he, you know, would like to go ahead and keep them as twin mandolins. We originally were going to stain this one the way that Thomas Mandolin was stained, which I like very much, and my wife really loves that one. But she also likes this. She thinks it's very pretty. So we're going to go for that, and we're going to do the best we can. Here we go. We're going to start off by putting on the bright yellow, which people have seen me do this before and they think I'm ruining it immediately, but this is what gives it that real nice highlight under there. And the difference is on this one, I think, yeah, I'm going to make it bright, but then I'm just going to lightly fade the yellow into the outside edges, even though it's going to eventually get darker. And not exactly sure what I'm going to do around the rose here yet.
I'm not worthy of my Lord's amazing grace.
The thing about these dies is they're fairly adjustable. You can do a lot with them and change them around and different things. So if this doesn't prove to be right, well, it's not all lost. We can work with it. And I'm just going to lightly put it on the back of here, even though you won't even see much of this. I have dark brown and light brown. The light brown, what I've been told, has more red in it. I'm going to stick with the dark brown at first, and we'll just use it and then lighten it up. I'll start around the darker edges, of course.
Jesus makes me worthy of my God's amazing grace.
There's a drop of glue that hid out on me there that we'll have to get off of there. Yeah, that happens too. And you know, I even used a black light and everything, and you still don't see them all. But actually this new glue, the canopy glue, hardly even shows up under black light. Doesn't seem to fluoresce. So that would be one negative of the new glue, but that's the only negative I really run up against so far. Well, actually, the other negative is if you don't get it off right away, it's a little more difficult to get it off. You kind of have to scrape it off. There, that got rid of it. Looks like there's a spot right here that's not taking stain. I don't know what that is, if that was that glue and I just fingerprint with the glue on it or something. And you don't see a lot of these things until you start staining, and then you got problems. So it never seems like you're ever done, you know. Hopefully that'll cover now. Better for sure. Yeah, I think it's going to work now. You're probably still wondering how it's ever going to look like that other thing, but we haven't done the blending yet. And that's where it starts to look like what you want it to look like, I think. You know, I'm just kind of rubbing it a little dry just to get the hint of the brown in there and darken up the yellow a little bit. But it looks pretty bad right now, I admit. But I've been there many times before, so it doesn't bother me yet. And then, even after we're done, we have to take the airbrush and darken the brown around the outside edges. So that makes a difference too. Okay, I'll get the alcohol now and we'll see what we can do with that. I've used all kinds of alcohol in this, rubbing alcohol, denatured alcohol. I assume even, you know, spirits would probably work too, but I don't use those. So anyway, it's starting already to look real pretty, just with a little bit of rubbing like that. Starting to blend a little bit. I still see spots, glue type spots that, you know, really was hoping I wouldn't run into, but I'm running into them.
I'm an old dirt farmer, I scrape a living from the soul. Like my father before me, I labor and toil. But my father...
It's taking shape, just takes time. You can't make it in 5 minutes, that's for sure. There's another glue spot. Yeah, sometimes you just find tons of them. And keep in mind, I sanded for hours on this. Hours. And like I said, I took it in a dark room and used a black light, and they just didn't show up.
Said, son, you should move away. He said, farm life is dying. Son, please don't stay. I moved to the city and I tried to fit in.
Getting there around the rows is always tricky. Not even 100% sure how I'm going to do that. It seems like I do a different process every time. Well, you can see I've made quite a bit of progress. And Ron is in the shop today, so he's kind of giving me guidance on the colors. We're getting close. We still a long ways on the edges yet. I haven't even started the edges or the neck, but the front, but the back here he likes. He thinks that looks really close to what we're trying to go for, and the front he thinks is looking pretty close, although I haven't completely finished the front yet. So I'm just working on it. Just keep, you know, taking my time with it. The alcohol removal is what makes it look like what you're going for, generally speaking. So, and that's what blends it also. So the alcohol part, that step is very important step. And like right here in the center, you know, you can lighten it up and bring it back to where you want to be with the alcohol. There's the picture. We'll zoom in on it so you can kind of see that we're in the ballpark. It may not be perfect, quote unquote, but that'll probably never happen anyway. So I'm doing the best I can, and I'm fairly happy with where we're at so far, and we'll just keep working till we get it there. Well, we've taken the airbrush to it. It's starting to look real pretty. Yeah, I think you can see it there. And it's beginning to dry, the airbrushing. I still got a little bit to work on there. It's going to look a lot better once these edges are cleaned up and the binding is cleaned and all that. It really looks a lot different. It changes the looks almost entirely. You can see the neck there. It's starting to look like it should look. Keep in mind that these dark areas now have a little bit of lacquer mixed in with the dye. That's what the airbrushing is. So they look a little shiny compared to the rest. So it doesn't look perfect yet, but each step brings it a little closer. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to give that a little thought, and I think I'll bring the other one up to this point. Just thought I'd give you a comparative. You know, you can see how the process gets you to this, but when you just look at this by itself, you think, how in the world do you ever get it to look like that? So I just give you a comparative there. Decided that before I go any further with this, I'm going to fit these bridges up to each mandolin. That way, after the finish is done, I won't have to do anything on the soft finish to make these work. They're pretty close already, I can tell, just from the carving and the way these are made. They usually are very, very close to the way I build the top. As you can see, it's already taken a pretty good amount off of each foot. They're not perfectly fitting by any stretch, but they're not bad. And again, as I do it, I put just the slightest amount of pressure on the back side to make so that way when it sits on there, it doesn't want to lean forward.
I thought of my father, how the crops would get in. I could hear him say so.
It's actually surprisingly close for not having, checked it before. I think you can see how close it is already. The thing is, you've got to mark these so that you don't turn it around. But we're getting very close now, having full contact. I might point out, my wife picks everything I do completely apart, which is a good thing in these situations. And she's looking for any flaws and that kind of thing that I don't see because of my color blindness or whatever. And you notice there's a dark stripe here and a little bit of a dark stripe here. This little section here is darker, and this little section, there's a seam right down the middle. Well, that's just book matched, and that's just the way that tree grew, and there's really nothing I can do about that. It's just, it took the stain a little bit darker, and as a matter of fact, the other one did the exact same thing, just not as much. This one's a little bit more pronounced than the other one. Not significantly different, but different. So you can see it on both of them, but there's nothing that I can do about that. I mean, that's just Mother Nature, the way the tree grew. And this, by the way, is the Florida mandolin. So I'm going to mark this as the Florida bridge, and I'm also going to mark it with the E side over there on that side over here. So just about really got it fitting up pretty good. Might take a tiny bit more fitting whenever I put the strings on it, but right now it's pretty good. So I'm going to mark this as the E side, and I'm also going to type in or write in FLA. So we'll know that later when we put this together. And now we have the UK mandolin, and you can see the line here and the line here. It's there. It's just not nearly as pronounced as in the other mandolin, but it is there, and it's just the way the tree grew. So there's nothing you can do about that. But let's see here, as far as the fit up, we'll set that over here like so, and it's pretty close, but the toe on this side is, on the E side especially, is a little tall, so I think I'm just going to knock that down just a little bit with the file before I start.
You should move away.
Looks a lot closer. That one really is already almost completely fitted up. I can tell just by the sanding on it. Wow, yeah, it's pretty much already there.
He said farm life.
Go just a little bit more, but I think we're just about there.
Son, please don't stay.
I'm going to look them over now. They've been sitting overnight. I'm going to look them over for fine detailing, and then if they pass, then I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off here, clean up the binding, and we're going to start putting the clear lacquer on them. Decided to go ahead and take the tape off. I'm pretty happy with the job the way it is right now. There might be a minor amount of touch-up needed after we clean up the binding and stuff, but overall I'm pretty happy with it. I thought I'd just show you, if the, taking the tape off there, it helps a little bit, but that stuff still bleeds under. It'll be a little less scraping maybe. I don't know if it's really truly worth taping it off or not, to be honest. Never did it before. I've never tried taping it off before because I kind of knew what to expect, and I'm pretty much getting about what I expected. I don't know, there may be some benefit that I'll discover here as I start to scrape it off, but as of right now, it doesn't look like it really did all that much for me. And it looks like the tape kind of stuck in places, so I'll have to scrape some tape off even maybe. So I don't know if it saved me a thing or not. I'd say probably not really in the long run of things. And it's kind of hard to get the tape off too. Because see, you have to spray that lacquer, that dark lacquer, and then that kind of sticks it down because the lacquer goes over the tape. So I don't know. Maybe it wasn't worth it. Would I do it again? I don't know if it's worth it. Maybe not. Unless I discover some benefit as I'm actually cleaning all the binding. It's actually kind of hard to put that tape on because you're into such tight curves and bends and things. Yeah, it didn't save me too much, I don't think, but we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and take it off the fretboard too. And the binding off of here because I want to clean it all up good before I start spraying the clear. I will have to retape the fretboard off, but that only takes a minute, so it's not a big deal. Let's start with this single edge razor blade because that's what I like to use. It's easy for me to control, and I just get it over here in my lap and get it comfortable, and I have to get down to that fine white binding down right next to the brown. There's going to be hours of scraping involved between the two mandolins, so just going to show a little part of this process, and then we're just going to turn the camera off and get the job done. And what you do is you set your fingers as your depth gauge there, and then that's how you go around it and keep it consistent. And you have to keep it from chattering. You can hear it and feel it when it's chattering, and so you gotta work that out until you get rid of that chatter right there. As far as I know, this is kind of how they do it in the factories and everything, so I don't think this is anything unique to just the way I do it. I don't think. Although they probably got improved processes. But that'll give you an idea. Here's the before with the dirt on there, and here's the after where it's pretty clean. And then we'll, go around with a detail eye and look at it all later. But right now I just want to get it knocked off pretty quickly and move on. Well, in truth, I would say it took me about an hour and 45 minutes to clean the binding off of the body, but I haven't got it all yet. You can see down in here, all this detail scraping has to be done, and that has to be done, and that's probably going to take me at least another hour, if not more, because that's where the hard scraping is. But that gives you some idea. It just takes time. There's no easy process there. But I think it's looking really fine. I think it's looking really, really good. I hope it looks good on camera there. They always look a little bit more yellow on camera than they do in real life to me. I don't know. They just seem to do that. And even a little bit more blotchy on camera. They seem a little smoother here in real life, but I don't know. That's just the way it is. We'll show you what it looks like when we get all the final detail scraped out. It's now 11 o'clock a.m. I started on scraping this binding at about, probably 8:15 this morning. So, what is that, 3 hours and 15 minutes total? And guess what? I'm not done yet because I still got this detail around here to do. But I'm going to take a lunch break. I like to eat lunch early, so we'll take a lunch break and come back and finish this up, and we'll be ready to put the clear lacquer on this baby. Just thought I'd give you a look at it now that it is completely scraped, and here's, the one that I've got to scrape yet. So, I think part of the reason they look a little different right now is just because it looks so much cleaner with this, look here. But we'll see. Hopefully they'll look a whole lot alike when we're done. Well, here they are in their finality prior to switching sides there so you can see in case the light's a little different. But they look pretty much the same. They're never going to be perfect. There's both peg heads, if you can see them both. And there's both backs. The wood takes stain a little differently each time. Every piece of wood's a little different. So, I don't know. It just is what it is. We're about ready to put the lacquer on them. Friends, the twin mandolins are turning out pretty nice. As you can see here, that's what they look like with the finish on them. Now, this is probably 9 or 10 coats of varnish finish. It's nitrocellulose lacquer. The thing is that lacquer soaks in really bad to the pores. They've been drying for about 7 days, so it's long enough now to sand them down, and then we'll recoat it, hopefully with the final coats. So our Mountain View trip this year is June 13th, 14th, and 15th. We'll be returning on the 16th. I'm going to try to have the mandolins there on display so that you can see them. And they'll be, ready for pickup for the fellow from Florida, and the other one there will be ready to be shipped right to England as soon as I get back from Mountain View. If you're not familiar with our Mountain View trip, we have it's just a big jam session is what it amounts to for those days while we're down in Mountain View, Arkansas. And on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock a.m., we're going to have a workshop. And that workshop might go till noon. I don't know for sure. We'll just see who shows up. And I've heard from a number of you that said they're going to be there, so that's going to be great. So plan on a workshop on Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, there in Mountain View, Arkansas. And we'll do it on the courthouse square. And it'll be the courthouse, the corner of the courthouse square closest to the pine wood cabins. There's some large maple trees on that side, and we'll find us a big old maple tree and get in the shade. Hope you can come and join us and see the mandolins finished there. Right now I'm going to take one at a time, and I'm going to just basically sand almost every bit of the finish that I have on there off to get them level. That'll just level the surface, get rid of the grain marks and things, and then we can put the final coats on. I've got me some water with some dishwashing soap in there. Got some 320 wet or dry soaking in that, and now we're just going to start leveling it off. The 320 seems to be about my favorite for this first rough sanding, and a couple of reasons. It's fairly aggressive, yet it's fine enough that it doesn't leave any big scratches. Yet it's coarse enough that it leaves fine enough scratches that the next coat of lacquer will blend into it really well. No matter how good you think you have sanded it before you even started, this lacquer just finds little imperfections and just creates a big crater around it. It's so annoying. I can't even tell you how annoying it is. But so what we'll do is we'll level off as much of it as possible, and then wherever there is a crater or whatever that shows up, we will drop fill those with just use a toothpick and some lacquer and drop fill those little holes, and then let that dry a little while, and then we'll put the final coats of lacquer on. I interrupt this video to show you this, a whole box of antler pieces sent to me by Mr. Randy Grills. I believe he's out in Massachusetts, if I remember correctly. And he sent a whole bunch of stuff here. A lot of this is very good and can definitely be used. Most of it, to be perfectly honest with you, is too porous for mandolin saddles. You know, that little end right there is probably big enough, but when you see how quickly it narrows down, it probably won't make a mandolin saddle. There's just too much porosity in it. Most of this is that way. However, they all make good, you know, guitar saddles. Now, unfortunately, I don't need pieces for guitar saddles too much, because all of the offcut of the other stuff is just piled up here, and that all makes good guitar saddles. So I'm pointing out that I don't want anybody to waste their time and money and effort sending me pieces that are you know, cut-offs, I guess you'd say, because they're just, for the most part, they're just too porous. And you know, that's like, this is probably off of an elk. It might not be. It might be a whitetail. It's possible. It's pretty big though. But anyway, most, you know, a lot of people ask me, why don't you use moose and elk antler? Well, for the most part, the bigger they are, the more porous they are. And just the outer thin shell is the only thing that's very good. And so like on a big elk antler, you think, well, that's a good antler. That'll really make a lot of them. It doesn't, because it's so thin. You know, Mother Nature takes care of that by lightening it up, making it porous and hollow in the center there. And, you know, otherwise it would even, I mean, they're heavy as they are, but they'd even be heavier if they were solid, you know. So in the same way with the moose antler, I suspect, although I haven't had much moose antler to deal with, most all of it is pretty solid right at the very base. So I mean, the elk and the moose and everything would probably be about like a whitetail at the base, maybe a little bit bigger, and maybe get a little bit more out of them. But overall, the base is about all you can really use to make the mandolin saddles. So I just wanted to point that out. That I don't mean to take anything away from Randy. I really appreciate it, and we will use this all eventually, so it's not going to go to waste or anything. But I just wanted to point that out in case you were going to send some. There's not too much point in sending this type, because, you know, I've got a ton of that. So thank you very much. Well, I just got a ton of that to do, probably 4 or 5 hours per mandolin, believe it or not. That's how long it takes to get it all into the detail and everything. So I'm not going to film any more of that. I'll just show you what it looks like when we're done.